Hello, everyone, everywhere. This is Pastor Bob Thibodeau. Welcome to your Freedom Through Faith video minute for today, which is December 6th. Today, we're going to be reading a special story from the Old Testament, from 2 Samuel chapter 11 and chapter 12. Because of the length of time, the time constraints of this type of broadcast, this type of video, I'm only going to be teaching very briefly, skipping from verse to verse in order to get everything in. But what I want you to see is you have a place called there. We studied this with Elijah when God made provision for him over there. Now he could have stayed where he was at and suffer the consequences of the famine with everybody else, but God's blessing was over there. And if you are not where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, you're not in your place called there. You're not where the blessing is. And if you're not where the blessing is, that means you are where the curse is. And the choice was yours to make. Now, in chapter 11, we see here, it came to pass at the time when kings go forth to battle. David's the king of Israel. His place is to lead the armies into battle. But instead, he wanted to stay in the palace where all the nice things are and people wait on him hand and foot. He didn't want to go out and live in a tent and the heat and the dirt and the grime and leading people into battle with all the blood and the killing going on. So he sent Joab to do it. I'll stay back here and just hang out. He's not in his place called there. And since he's not where the blessing is, he is where the curse is. And where the curse is, the devil reigns. And David had one weakness. He loved women. And here that night, it says, David tarried at Jerusalem, and one night rose from his bed, was walking on the roof of the king's house, and from the roof, now he's supposed to be out in the field. Instead, he's on the roof where he's not supposed to be. And he saw a woman washing herself. The woman was very beautiful to look upon. So he sent and inquired who she was and found out she was Uriah's wife. Hey, he ain't here. Gonna have a little fun. And he brought her in, had relations with her, and she conceived and sent word and said, I'm pregnant. Now David's in a quandary. Uriah is one of his favorite men. And how can I fix this? I know, I'll bring him back. He can give me a report. I'll send him down to his wife. And then later she'll say, hey, I'm pregnant. And, he'll think the child's his. Problem is, Uriah is so honorable, he refuses to have any peace at all while he's back in the city of Jerusalem, because his desires to be with his men in battle, leading them, taking care of them, making sure they're okay so they can come back to their wives. Well, after a couple nights of trying to get Uriah to go down there, David realized this isn't going to work. What's plan B? And the devil puts his mind. Anytime you are doing what the devil says to do instead of what God says to do, it's going to deal with stealing, killing, or destroying. And he had relations with Uriah's wife. Now he's going to kill Uriah to cover up his own sin. And he says here over in verse 14 that David wrote a letter to Joab, sent it by the hand of Uriah, about killing Uriah. Uriah was so honorable, he did not even read the note. He was carrying his own death warrant in his hand and did not even know it, and was so honorable and so loyal to David that he did not even read that letter. Well, eventually Uriah died. Joab sent word. David said, okay, that's fine, and then called in Bathsheba and said, I'm going to marry you to take care of this baby. Well, now, down in chapter 12, verse 1, the Lord sent Nathan to David. And Nathan laid out for David a scenario. Said, hey, I got a question for you. There's a situation. This one guy has one little ewe lamb, and he loved it so. It was the only lamb he had. He loved it so much, made all provision for it, took care of it. And this other guy came in. He had hundreds of lambs, but he looked at this one and said, I want that one too. And he killed the guy and took the lamb. What are we going to do with this? What do you think should happen? And I love this. God is allowing David to judge himself. When I was in the military, and I did this with my kids growing up too, but I started in the military, if someone did something wrong under my command, I would bring them in and say, what do you think your punishment should be? And let me tell you right now, if you try to be lenient, too lenient, because I have a standard in my mind about what the punishment's already going to be. But I'm going to let you be your own judge. In other words, I was saying, how guilty do you really feel? What do you think is right? And if I was dealing, let's just use 4 days grounding, 4 days suspension, 4 days of being restricted to post. If that was the standard in my mind and he came up and said, 1 day, then I would tell him, I said, I'm going to, whatever you pick, if it's too light, I'm going to double it. So you need to be sure you're thinking on the same level I am. And in some cases, like I said, if it was 4 days restriction, he said 1, I said, no, it's going to be 8. But if he came off and said 5 days, okay, sounds good. And I probably 80% of the time, probably 90% of the time, the people who I allowed to do that judged themselves more harshly than what I was going to do. That is the scenario God is setting up for David right here. What do you think this punishment should be? And David said, as the Lord Jehovah lives, that man that has done this thing shall die. And he will also restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing and because he had no pity. And Nathan says to David, you are that man. But because he was anointed, he had the anointing. Because he was the king, he's the anointed king. God said, I'm not going to kill you. There will be a sacrifice for this sin, which will be your baby that she's pregnant with right now, conceived in sin. That child shall die. And that child ultimately did die. And the point I'm trying to make is, if you know you're supposed to be somewhere, God has called you to do something, and you, in your infinite wisdom, decide, I'm not going to do what God says to do. I'm not going where he tells me to go. I'm going to stay here. Sin is knocking at your door, because where you are in disobedience, the blessing is not there. And folks, if you get to where you're supposed to be and you do what you're supposed to be, and you make sure that everybody knows that you're serving the Most High God, and the blessing is there, everyone will see the blessing in action, and you will be blessed in all that you do.